Calls today for the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, to review the need for a transport pass for Londoners aged between 60 and 65, not necessarily on South West trains, which, you know, are subject to strike action, but that's another story. Well, a think tank, Centre for London, says the 60-plus Oyster card is mainly being used by people who are actually still working and, on the whole, in many instances, wealthier than younger age groups. So is it time to change that system and, more broadly, giving wealthier, older citizens fewer financial perks than they actually may need? We're joined by Lara Crisp, editor of the website Grandsnet, and Matthew Lesh, head of research at the Adam Smith Institute. Very warm welcome to both of you. Lara, if we can just start with the brass tacks of this thing. This 60-plus Oyster photo card, I think it costs about £20 to buy, but when you've got it, it entitles you to what? Hello, Lara. Just nod if you can hear us.
Yes.
Hi, Lara. Just tell us about this Oyster photo card. What does it give users? What does it entitle them to do?
It entitles them to travel around London freely. But it's the bridging gap between that and the Freedom Pass, which people start being eligible for from 65.
And I think, Matthew, the sums involved are not inconsiderable. The cost of Transport for London, because they're the ones who are on the hook for this, I think at the moment it's about 70 million a year. By 2023, not very long, we're up to about 130 million. So it seems a disproportionately large increase. But the impact, therefore, will be spread onto, and the cost, effectively, will be borne by younger travellers on the whole.
I think that's completely right. I think it is an important question to ask about whether or not this is an appropriate handout. People between that 60 to 65 or even shortly a little bit older age group as the state pension increases are largely working. They're earning some of the highest incomes of their lifetime. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to give them free public transport, particularly when younger Londoners are often struggling with the cost of transport. Transport for London has a deficit of about £1 billion a year, and that just effectively means fewer services for deprived areas and less opportunity for others. I think it's a sensible question to ask whether or not that this particular perk should continue.
Well, Lara, for many people, the idea of somebody who is between 60 and 65 being a full beneficiary of effectively state handouts will strike some people as simply too young.
So we've canvassed our users on Grandsnet, and the average age of our user is 63, and most of them have said that they feel that obviously help should go where help is most needed, and regardless of age. So I think they agree that 60 is probably too young, but at the same time they do feel that London is a very expensive place to travel, and that people should be incentivised to use public transport, not to use their own cars. Because of air pollution, parking, congestion, etc. I think just to sort of touch on what Mark said about over 60s being very wealthy. Absolutely, there are a lot of people who have benefited from the property boom and from good pensions, etc. But I don't think that should be sort of a widespread sort of assumption. These are people also who are have given up work potentially to look after their elderly parents. They're looking after grandchildren, enabling their grown-up children to actually go back to work. So the research that we've done at Grandsnet shows that quite a few of these people have actually given up work or gone down to reduced hours, and may actually put themselves in a financially unstable position in order to sort of help. It's known that grandparents contribute £22.5 billion to the UK economy every year. So it's not as if, I feel at the moment the report kind of seems to be demonising and sort of pitting generations against each other, which I don't think is particularly helpful.
I mean, it's not demonising in the sense that this was a perk, this was a benefit that was offered to people. The people can't be blamed for taking the benefit, can they, if it makes their travel around London cheaper in this instance? Matthew, in terms of the means testing, potentially, because, I think that there's a consensus, isn't there? If you're going to target, if you've got limited resources, you have to ration resources, then you target those who are least able to pay. But for a £20 photo card, Oyster card, you're not going to have the full administrative panoply and bureaucracy required to start means testing for a 20 quid photo card.
Yeah, I think there's probably a bit of a trade-off when it comes to administrative costs of means testing versus the potential financial saving of it, and whether or not it is easier, therefore, to scrap it all together rather than trying to give it to some people or to combine it in with some other kind of state benefit. Now, I don't think anyone's questioning the contribution that their grandparents and older Brits make to society, have made to society, and continue to make through caring and other means. I think that's a very important point to acknowledge, but I do think it does link, and this particular issue links into this broader debate about longevity. I mean, the good news, the fantastic news, is that we are living longer, healthier and happier lives than ever before. Somebody born today can be expected to live to the ripe old age of 90. Compared to historically, a few hundred years ago, even 100 years ago, you'd be looking at closer to 40 or 50 or 60. So that does raise a lot of challenges financially, particularly with a declining working age population, about the extent to which we can expect those who are working to pay for benefits for those who are older, and really whether or not government should therefore be targeting handouts to those who need them the most, those who are financially struggling, rather than giving them out to everyone, including wealthier retirees who could perhaps fund a little bit more of their own way when it comes to certain services or handouts.
And on that point, Lara, I don't know if there's a consensus to any measure on Gransnet about this, but that idea that, for instance, things like TV licences, the winter fuel payment, this has been a story that's been in the news for 3 or 4 years, hasn't it? This idea of older recipients of those expensive benefits, again, which, they were given, you could argue, as blandishments to make them vote for a particular party at a given time. They can't be criticised for accepting those benefits. They've been given to them. But is there a consensus on your website about the iniquity, the appropriateness or otherwise of benefits like that?
So we were involved with the BBC TV licence consultation process, actually, and we ask our users regularly about these kind of things. And for the most part, they actually are very much in favour of means testing and of the appropriate help given where it is needed. Some of them actually have said on the forums that they actually don't claim the benefits that they actually are entitled to because they don't feel that they need them. So I don't think that they are I just don't think that they're sort of taking what isn't what they don't need, basically.
Adam Matthew. You're not Adam Smith. That would be all wrong.
But
in terms of means testing, is it an expensive business? Is it an accurate business? And of course, there's an extent to which if you're going to do it properly, you've got to look at somebody's tax records, their pay slip. The state begins to enter into private aspects of people's lives even before you get into the cost of the exercise.
I mean, that's true. Of course, the state more or less already has access through Treasury and through the taxes we pay into the knowledge of kind of what our general income is. If you were to base it on that, it's a little bit harder if you're going to be basing it based upon people's wealth, since that can be a kind of a difficult calculation to make. I suspect the way forward, though, with these kinds of handouts is to really create one system of means testing in which we say people are entitled to a certain additional list of benefits if their wealth or their income is below a certain extent, and you just do this all at one point rather than let's say the City for London trying to do it separately from the City for Manchester or one department trying to do it by itself. You could probably reduce a lot of the administrative costs by working that out on an individual by individual basis. I also think it is something that would be quite politically wise. I think the assumption has been that simply buying votes and giving older Brits certain handouts is the way forward in order to win them as an electoral base. I think clearly from what we're hearing from Gransnet users in particular is that people are actually becoming a little bit more sceptical of these kind of handouts. It is quite blatant politicking, and people could perhaps respect a government more that actually helps those in need rather than trying to help everyone.
Matthew Lesh from the Adam Smith Institute and Lara Crisp from Gransnet. Thanks both very much.